after an excruciating offseason of speculation about where Damian Lillard was going to end up getting traded to, that trade has finally come and he is on his way to Milwaukee. Now here's a super quick rundown of all of the trade details. The big things to pay attention to here is the fact that the Bucks got Dame, the Blazers got Jrue Holiday and DeAndre Ayton, and the Suns got Jusuf Nurkic, Nasir Little, Keon Johnson, and Grayson Allen. I'm going to talk about some of the implications for the Suns and the Blazers from this trade in separate videos, but in this video, I want to focus specifically on the Bucks. Obviously, it's a no-brainer that a duo of Giannis and Damian Lillard is going to be insanely good, but I want to hopefully put into context just how good this duo has the potential to be and why there's a ton of signs from what Damian Lillard did last year and what he's been doing for his entire career, so we can hopefully get an idea of how this trade really addresses a ton of concerns for the Bucks and hopefully is going to solve a lot of their problems. Yes, the Bucks did lose Jrue Holiday in this trade. He had one of the best regular seasons of his career last year. They're losing his perimeter defense, which is of course valuable. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire NBA. But we also need to consider what they're getting in acquiring Dame. I know it was easy to cast the Trailblazers by the wayside and not really pay a ton of attention to them, but Damian Lillard had a pretty insane season last year. He recorded 32.2 points, 7.3 assists. He shot 37.1% from 3 on 11.3 attempts per game. We're going to be unpacking all of those numbers throughout the course of this video, but to me, it really doesn't matter how good Jrue Holiday's defense is. You make this trade 10 times out of 10 if you're the Bucks. Probably the biggest thing that this trade is going to address for the Bucks is the fact that their half-court offense had a tendency to get really stagnant. We got to see that on full display in their series against the Miami Heat during the first round of the playoffs last year. They would get bogged down by a lack of ball movement. Guys would be ISOing and not really being able to get a bucket when they needed to, and they generally just struggled to put up points at times during very key stretches of games during that series. When their usual offensive sets would start to fall apart, they would have to try and lean on guys to just create offense out of nothing for themselves, guys like Jrue Holiday, guys like Chris Middleton, guys like Giannis when he was actually playing because he was dealing with his injury throughout the course of that series. They didn't really have an isolation bucket getter that could kind of dig them out of those ruts whenever they came up. Damian Lillard is going to come in from day one and immediately fix that problem. Last season, the Bucks didn't have a single player recording more than 0.89 points per possession in isolation. For context, as a team in isolation, they were the second worst in the entire NBA. Dame was statistically the second best isolation scorer in the entire league last season. We're going to get into some of the nuance, some of the different plays that Milwaukee's going to have the opportunity to run and plug Dame into that have the potential to work really well. But ultimately, the big thing to note is that Dame is one of the best isolation scorers in the entire league right now, and that is immediately going to have huge benefits for Milwaukee, regardless of anything else that happens. The first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to their half-court offense is high pick and rolls, because this is going to be huge for them. Now, I'm sure a lot of you know what a high pick and roll is, but for those that don't, it's a pick and roll, but it's set high up on the court, usually with the rest of the guys on the floor spaced out on the perimeter. The Blazers utilize this for Dame a ton, and it's normally really effective when you have an elite perimeter threat as your ball handler. This is going to have a lot of benefits for multiple reasons. The first of which is if the big man defending the pick and roll isn't playing close enough to the level of the screen like Gobert is here, then Dame is going to be able to step right into a pull-up three, and oftentimes he's going to be able to drill them without really any issue. Outside of just his ability to hit shots from beyond the arc, he can also make use of all of the space that comes as a result of setting these pick and rolls so high so he can get going downhill. Look at all of this space that he has to work with because everyone else is spaced out. This makes it so that when he drives, the Rockets are going to have to show other defenders to deter him from going to the basket. Now, with Kenyon Martin stepping away from the weak side corner, it's going to open up this backdoor cut, and Dame can manipulate the defense further into him towards the rim before he dumps it off for the finish. All of this is a stark contrast to how Jrue Holiday was defended in the pick and roll, and this isn't a diss to him, this is just a result of Jrue Holiday not being the perimeter threat that Dame is. Teams were oftentimes pretty comfortable dropping heavily against him when he was the ball handler in the pick and roll. He could still shoot and abuse the drop coverage on occasion, but not quite at the rate or level that Dame can. Jrue recorded 1 point per possession as the pick and roll ball handler on 7.2 possessions per game, but Dame recorded 1.14 points per possession as the pick and roll ball handler on 12.4 possessions per game. So yes, Jrue wasn't bad, but Dame is just on an entirely different level as far as pick and roll creation. And the benefits of this for Milwaukee extend further than just Dame being able to get good looks from beyond the arc. Here's a possession where Jrue is the ball handler. The thing to look at is the lack of space inside the arc that Milwaukee has to work with. PG is sagging off, Man is trailing right behind, and Zubac is in the paint and he has things kind of warded off. Jrue still manages to score on the tough pull-up, but now I want you to take a look at this possession. The Blazers are starting this possession already way high up in the half court. There's plenty of space for Dame to get downhill or for the roller to get into space for a short roll pass. There's plenty of possibilities because of how high up the other pick and roll defender has to play, since they're being forced to play at the level of the screen due to Dame being able to shoot. In this case, Dame's going to be able to find Nurkic on the short roll, which collapses the defense, leaving the perimeter kickout open, and then it gets back to Dame, and he's going to attack the closeout to find Watford for an easy three once he collapses the defense. Now I want you to imagine that same exact play, but instead of Nurkic, it's Giannis getting the ball on the short roll, and instead of Trendon Watford on the wing, it's Chris Middleton. The amount of opportunities that should theoretically arise as a result of plays as simple as high pick and rolls is going to be some really beautiful basketball. Another exciting possibility for Milwaukee is actually going to be a play that both Milwaukee and the Trailblazers ran last season with a good amount of success. It's called a double drag, also known as a 77. It's just two screens up top, usually with one screener rolling and the other popping out to the perimeter. Here's an example of what it looked like when the Bucks ran it. In this situation, Miles is good just sitting back, anticipating the roll. Giannis eventually does make the roll and Jrue finds him, and Giannis has to finish through a little bit of traffic against Turner. Now here's what it looked like when Portland ran it. Dame drives on the screens, and Plumlee has to play up to the level of the screen so that he can deny Dame an easy three, and Dame's original defender is still chasing him, so Winslow's left alone up top. Dame is going to make use of Plumlee being the closest defender, and he dribbles into space to drill the three. They're going to be able to run some of the same exact plays that they were running last year, but chances are they're not going to have to work quite as hard as they were to get buckets. This trade is also going to make things significantly easier for Chris Middleton, who was dealing with injuries throughout the season last year. This trade should hopefully take some of the offensive burden off of his shoulders, and he can play a more simplified role and really get to maximize his strengths. He's going to be able to feast on wide open looks that come off of Dame and Giannis's two-man game. Just camping out on the weak side and waiting for his defender to help off of him is going to result in countless spot-up opportunities. It worked for Dame's teammates in Portland, and that was coming off of the gravity of a guy like Nurkic as the roller. Imagine how much gravity and how many advantages the Bucks are going to be able to generate when it's Giannis as the roller or Brook Lopez. Probably the play that I'm most excited to see the Bucks hopefully integrate into their offense next year is the Spain pick and roll. It involves a third player setting a screen for the defender guarding the roll, and then they usually pop out to the perimeter. I don't have a clip of Portland or Milwaukee running this play. Trust me, I looked for a really long time. I could not find one, but I found a good example from the Pacers. They actually ran Spain pick and rolls probably more than any other team in the entire league last year. Tyrese uses the screen from Turner to get going downhill, and Buddy's going to come to set a follow-up screen for Turner's roll. Turner's defender doesn't come with him, anticipating what Hield is trying to do, so Hield's going to use this opportunity to pop out to the perimeter so that he can get an easy look from three. Now imagine this same exact play, but instead of Tyrese, it's Dame, instead of Turner, it's Giannis, and instead of Hield, it's Brook Lopez, and meanwhile, you still have Chris Middleton somewhere on the wing waiting for it. That's an extremely lethal combination of players capable of executing an action like this at a high level. There are still a couple of elephants in the room when it comes to this trade for the Bucks. The first of which is, of course, their defense. To an extent, I think the amount of offensive firepower that they're going to have just between Dame, Giannis, and Middleton is going to be enough to outscore their opponents on most nights. Aside from that, they still have Brook Lopez, one of the best rim protectors in the NBA, and of course they have Giannis, who's an elite defender. The combination of those two guys should be enough in theory to keep them at least around league average on the defensive end. They still have Bobby Portis, they still have Jay Crowder, and they have MarJon Beauchamp, who I'm actually really excited to see what he's able to do both on offense and on defense this year. So yes, the Bucks are taking a hit on the defensive end, but I think what they're getting on offense is going to outweigh that at the end of the day. The last thing we got to talk about is the Bucks' depth. I think this concern is maybe a little bit overstated. Realistically, they have an 8-man rotation of guys that you probably feel comfortable with, maybe 9 or 10, depending on how some of these young guys end up developing throughout the course of the regular season. Injuries could throw a bit of a wrench into everything. If one guy goes down, they're not going to have a lot of options on the bench to reach to try and make up for it. But this was still a gamble that you kind of have to make if you have Giannis in his prime like they do, and the rest of your core is starting to get a little bit up there in age. Ultimately, it's incredibly hard for me to see a world where this team isn't insanely good. The duo of Dame and Giannis is probably going to be the best duo in the NBA from day one, and they've got the potential to pencil themselves in as one of the most unstoppable duos in NBA history. So what did you guys think of this trade? Who are the winners? Who are the losers? Is it a win-win for everybody? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. If this is your first time visiting my channel, first of all, thank you for watching this far. Second of all, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, turn on that notification bell so you can see more videos like this. I'm releasing stuff all the time. Gonna have way more once the regular season starts up, but still got plenty of stuff in the works. Huge thank you to all my patrons for helping make these videos possible. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.